Life sometimes come at you fast. Tragedies make your life unravel. You feel like you wanna give up and stay knocked down. Even when your heart is shattered, you still got a life to live. You still got a life to live, so don't give up. We are beautiful miracles. We are beautiful miracles. We are beautiful miracles, so don't give up.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me on my podcast, Beautiful Tragedy. If you like what you're hearing, would you please like, comment, share, and subscribe? And today I am joined by Alvin and Margaret, and they wanted to come on and talk to us about their family and more especially their son, Addison. So thank you guys for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to just give a little warning, a little sensitive subject warning that we are going to be talking about suicide. And my hope is that you won't just tune out because it's a difficult subject to talk about. This is a subject that we really, really need to bring more into the light. As long as we continue to not talk about it, the stigma is going to perpetuate. And so I really am very thankful to you guys for being willing to talk about something that's very hard. And again, I already shared this with them, and I quote my therapist often, but when you replace the word hard with important, it changes how you approach it. And so this is hard, but it's important. So would you tell me a little bit about your family?
Sure. So Alvin and I got married in 2002 in July, and I was pregnant by September with Addison. And then 14 months later, Maya came along. So they were almost like twins. They call it Irish twins.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then Ellie, Eleanor, we call her Ellie, but she came along 3 years after that. So Addison would have been 18 in May. Maya will be 17, and Ellie just turned 15.
Mine will be 18 this year.
Maya will be 18?
Mm-hmm.
Did you lose track of time?
Am I wrong?
I think you're wrong.
Oh, 2004?
Yeah.
So,
No, that's 18.
yeah, that's 18.
So Addison would have been 19.
Addison would have been 19. this
But
year.
you know what? That is so real. Like, you lose track of time.
You just think of them as they're just there.
They're frozen in time, and that, like, even though it's, like, kind of funny, but it's like, no, that's very real. Like, your mind just gets stuck in time, you know?
Yeah.
So, so he would have been 19.
Yes, 19, 18, 15, yes. So that's our little family. Addison and Maya were really, really tight. They always used to pick on Ellie and give her a hard time, and that was the dynamic. And once Addison left us, the dynamic really changed. So that's been a work in progress.
Yeah. It's tough stuff. It's all those things that you just don't really think about. I always say that we were a 4-legged table and one of our legs is missing. And it's like trying to always find that balance. Like, I remember when we would first go out to dinner or ice cream, like, every table was a table for 4. There was always that empty spot, you know, and it was all I could see for the longest time. And
absolutely.
It's still there. It's not like it's gone, but I feel like, thankfully, it doesn't seem like it's the only thing I see now.
It's not so loud. Yeah.
Yeah. So talk a little bit more about Addison.
So I had to prepare here. So Addison, let me just read what I wrote here. Addison was incredible. He came out of the womb with these big, bright eyes that took in everything. He was so curious and agreeable as a baby. Growing up, he was always mature for his age. He had an enormous vocabulary, and he loved to talk about things, how they worked, what was going on, how to make sense of things. He loved getting dirty, being rambunctious, shooting Nerf guns at all of us. It's funny, I have a Nerf gun that showed up in the laundry room, and I just move it around, because our buddy's always there. Yeah. I don't know. It was probably 3 or 4. He started creating things out of paper.
Yeah, that was really unique. It's still something, because he didn't do it for too long, but he would take.
He did it for years.
He'd take copy paper, printer paper, and crumble it up till it was malleable and kind of soft, and he would make shapes out of it. like fish and guns and I mean things with moving parts. But that was his. He made a lot of his own just creations and toys
and
out of
Legos paper. And just very creative.
Very creative.
Yes.
Incredibly curious and busy. But he also had this quiet, pensive side where he would retreat and kind of mull things over. He was everyone's friend. So many young kids came up to us at a service to say Addison was their best friend. And I was like, I've never met you before.
Aww.
He just made people feel that way. Yeah. He taught himself how to play the guitar, the piano, and the drums. He was starting to write his own songs, and he tried a couple of times to start a band with his friends. He loved riding around town on his bike. Yeah. He was just like go, 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 but at the same time, like he could chill too.
Right.
Sit and read and just think and
kind of the best of both worlds.
Yeah. But he also was incredibly private about a lot of things. I mean, he just wouldn't open up even with his friends about stuff. So I think he carried a heavy load. Did you know
that he was struggling at all when he died?
Well, it's interesting. People always ask about that. And, I teach freshmen and juniors. So I teach this age bracket.
Right.
And everything's a big deal. They're overly dramatic. They can be really pessimistic. Just the littlest thing can turn into this big thing. So he struggled, but I don't think we knew the extent of it. A couple of days before he died, he and I talked about colleges, and he was overwhelmed by that. He said that all of his friends were depressed, and he didn't know what to do about it.
We had conversations about that, but he never alluded to any of that being a struggle that he went through. So
right.
it sounded as if it was everyone else. So I think of all the people that he knew, I don't think anybody would have suspected that he would be one that would be vulnerable to something like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of people, they look for the signs. Well, you're going to find those signs in people that aren't going to take their lives as well. So you can't really go by those signs. You're going to be turning over every stone. It's just there's nothing you can do. You can try your best to respond to what you think is going on, but sometimes if somebody's made that decision,
it's hard, and I talk with parents all the time of teenagers where you walk this really delicate line of giving them their independence, allowing them that freedom, right? And you're scared to death, right? Like, oh my gosh, they're leaving. They're going in a car with someone I don't know. Where are they going? What are they doing? Are they going to make good choices? Every time before he left, I say, I love you. Be smart. Make good choices. I love you too, Mom.
Aw.
But I mean, it was, you have to let go, right? By that age, 16, you've done your job, really.
And they're probably pushing you away, too.
They're pushing you away, which is
normal,
completely developmentally appropriate.
Right.
So you walk this fine line of, do I push? Do I see what's going on? Do I need to intervene? Do I need to be more this or that? And at the same time, giving them that freedom. So we could sit here all day and say, I should have done this, or I should have done that, or I should have done this. But Addison was loved.
Right.
He was thoughtfully parented. We had our struggles, but I've said this before, and this sounds really, really weird, and I don't know if I'm articulating it right, but a part of me feels like he knew that we loved him so much that we would be okay with this.
Wow. I can see that. I mean, I think that in a weird way makes sense,
Yeah.
So you obviously didn't expect this to happen.
No, this was
a total shock.
Completely out of the blue. There were no signs, no medication, no mental illness, no history of violence or behaviors or
no previous
anything.
Attempts.
No.
Wow. And you
sort.
You said he was impulsive. So, I mean, do you think that played into it?
I don't know. I mean, that's one route I've gone down because that was the one thing that we struggled with him since he was a little kid. He had a hard time with boundaries. If we'd say, Addison, you can't keep tickling somebody when they, you know what I mean? Like when they say no, that means no. You can't keep going. Yeah. And he really had a hard time reining it in. And, he'd snuck out a couple of times. Like he also had just an incredible imagination and curiosity. So I think a lot of times he didn't have the wherewithal, which is also developmentally appropriate. They don't sit there and go, okay, how is this going to affect my mom? How is this going to affect my dad? What are the consequences for me sneaking out right now?
Their brains just aren't developed enough.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly.
So he struggled with impulsivity, but I don't know. I don't know.
He was also kind of a risk taker. I mean, him and I have a lot of parallels, musically, artistically, a lot of the things. We're both left-handed. That there's a lot in that story.
Very similar.
Right.
But one thing, like, I cannot stand heights, and we had to get something off the roof. I remember he just hopped up there, and he just was I don't know, just didn't seem
almost fearless.
Right.
Yeah, kind of fearless in that way. So he was willing to take those chances.
Didn't contemplate the risk or the fear associated with things.
Right.
But at the same time, though, given that we know from his note that he did say that, he was scared and he didn't think anybody was going to be able to help him hold his hand through it, is the way he put it, if I remember right. So there was a certain fear, but not necessarily of the physical, maybe. Maybe it was more of the mental. It's interesting that physically it didn't seem to matter as much, but it was more of a risk to try to stay and face it in a different way, and it was easier to just leave,
Yeah, and I think that that's something that probably isn't discussed enough because, there's parts of their brain that just aren't fully developed. And so while we can say, gosh, there are people here, if in their mind that they think there isn't going to be someone there, it's like they just can't, and it's what's hard. I think what is like one of the most difficult things about losing as a child is that you want to know why. You want to know why, and you just don't get to know why. And our therapist has said, you can accept something, but that doesn't mean you like it. And I go in and out of accepting that Jackson isn't coming back. For the first year, I was hoping maybe he would still just come walking down the hall, But then it was like once the shock mostly wears off, then you realize they're not coming back. And so through my own work, I'm like, okay, well, I realize he's not coming back. But what I can not like it, and I don't like it, and none of us like it, So,
It's not, but I know that people have struggled with anger, right? Like, I'm angry. They ruined our lives, with somebody taking their life or, I don't struggle with that as much in the fact that, it was his choice. It sincerely was his choice. It was an independent thought that he did, whether or not it was. Obviously, it wasn't rational, but,
Right.
and I brought these books, and there are books on, there are stages that people go through. So, it could be impulsive. It could have been that he thought it out, I mean, he did leave a note. I don't know what the situation was.
So there are stages with suicide?
Yeah. So, I brought two books. One talks a lot about what they call he's a famous psychiatrist or researcher, but he talks about Edwin Schneidman, Dr. Schneidman.
Okay.
He talks about the main cause of suicide being psychological pain, which he calls the psych ache. He says it's the key to preventing suicide is not so much the study of the structure of the brain or the study of social statistics or the study of mental diseases as it is the direct study of human emotions. To treat a suicidal individual, we need to identify, address, and reduce the individual's psych ache. And psychic usually comes down to some common stressor, which he calls frustrated psychological needs. That is unique, right, to human beings. They don't see animals do this. But it is, then I read another book, it's called Suicidal, and this guy always struggled with suicidal thoughts, and he talks about these 5 stages that they, I'm not going to get it right, but it's like they think about it. Well, usually there's some type of loss that they have internalized. Girlfriend broke up with them, something that is really, they just start to ruminate on. And then they start thinking about whatever they can do to figure out how to solve this problem. And then they think about it. I'm really messing this up with the stages. I feel bad I'm not doing it justice.
Oh, that's
Okay,
all
that's
right.
okay.
Because we can totally link the book, and anybody who wants to learn more about it can totally read it.
Yeah. But they finally get to this point where they're so delusional that they believe that this is the acceptable way out.
Wow.
And what's interesting is you'll find with a lot of suicidal people, the week or two before they pass away, they're almost happier because they're at complete peace. They're like, oh, I finally got a way out.
Oh,
right.
It's a relief.
And I don't know if Addison struggled with that. I mean, he came home, so it was a Thursday night. He came home. I was exhausted. I said, can you guys go get pizza? Alvin, Ellie, and Addison went and got pizza. They brought it back. He showed me a piece of artwork that he brought home from school, which I was, like, oh. He got his pizza. I gave him a hug and a kiss. He went downstairs. That was it.
wow.
I mean, it was a normal day.
And is that when he died? Was that same day?
So,
Would have been sometime in the middle of the night.
yeah, we found him the next day.
Wow. We had talked a little bit, Alvin, about how his death affected you and your health. Would you be willing to talk about that?
Sure. Well, I mean, first off, I had known people that had lost children, but I didn't really know anyone that had been through a suicide, not personally. And so I had absolutely no hook to hang that on. And the way that it happened was, I was the one that discovered his body. So it's hard because I was recording a podcast when I found him. So as a producer, I was an audio producer, a music writer, and I was with a couple of people that were kind of friends of mine. I'd been recording for a while, but we couldn't find, Addison didn't come home from school. We didn't know what was going on. And I started looking around. My studio was in my home, in my basement. That's where his bedroom was downstairs, and then I found him. And it was just, there was the moment before and the moment after. And the shock of that. I mean, I was grateful that I was the one, if anybody was to find him in the family, that it was me.
Right.
But what that did to me, it's different as a father, because Addison, in a way, was a part of me because he's biologically my son, but I didn't carry him and nurture him. That wasn't my role. That was the gift that Margaret was able to bear. So I don't have a comparison, but it's like you said earlier, it's like losing a limb. There's a part of you that is just gone. And so the shock of all of that and where to put that energy, I had no bearing. Yeah. No, I didn't know where I was. So I literally shut down. And when he passed, he took not just all of our love with them, but I mean, also he was wrapped up in my talents and abilities because he was a songwriter and a musician. We had performed together for a recording for a few songs that I had written and did a video, and he was more of a drummer. I was a drummer, but I was a piano player by that time. And he played, and there was this whole thing. Yeah. And so everything just went into a vacuum like a black hole, and it was done. And so I already, as a creative, I know I don't fit in the 9-to-5 world. I work differently. And this made it almost just more difficult. My business was done. I never went back down there, I think, just to pack up. I think I went one time.
I think the Diet Coke sat there from the podcast for almost a year.
Yeah, everything was sitting
Wow.
like a bomb had went off.
Done.
It was
Right.
yeah,
Just
nothing
couldn't
moved.
go there. Oh
Done.
gosh, no.
No, and I had to embrace the. I had to be willing to embrace the fear of facing some of that before I was ready. And I remember I had even a friend that I had to ask over just to go down and change the filter and the air conditioner, the furnace downstairs, because I just couldn't do it. And so the way people tried to show love, I didn't know what in the world to do. What do you want people to do for you? You can't even think straight.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, when people say, and I do truly believe that people mean well. I really don't think that people are evil by nature, but like when people say, let me know what you need, it's like, oh my God, I have no clue
I don't know what I
need.
Yeah.
Like just
I've
do
seen-
everything for me.
I've seen a couple of posts lately where people say there are organizations now where it's like, I think it's called Lasagna Bank.
Yeah.
Bank or something.
Yeah. Lasagna love or something. Maybe.
Yeah. But it's like you make this stuff and you show up and you leave it. And if it gets eaten, it gets eaten. If it doesn't, it doesn't. You
Yes.
say, I'm going to come over, and you give options, right?
Yes.
So I'm going to come over either Friday or Saturday around this time, and I'm going to do whatever looks like it needs to be done. Like you just kind of impose yourself, because that person is, you wouldn't say, hey, to the guy that broke his leg, do you want to take a walk?
Right.
No.
Right. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And I mean, honestly, I ate sheerly out of obligation.
I didn't eat.
care.
I threw away. I mean, my mom threw away so much food.
Yeah.
I was
can
taking
definitely-
Zofran, or I was the medicine for being nauseous.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Because I
you were
couldn't.
wow.
I thought I'm gonna throw up. I just could not. Yeah.
And I think that's our body's way of reacting to trauma.
yeah,
You know,
shock. You
yeah.
go into shock
And shock is like a blessing and a curse, because it's like it's like your brain is protecting you from it, but then when that wears off, it's like, oh shit.
Mm-hmm.
This is horrible. This is like so
and we
horrible.
didn't know what to do. It was like, what do we? You know what I mean?
I didn't know who I was anymore.
It was the middle. Yeah, it was like, Addison passed in November.
Yeah,
And so
winter.
it was so dark and it was cold. And I didn't want to watch shows. I didn't want to read. I didn't want to sleep. I didn't want to be alive. Like, it was so hard to just
be.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know people can relate to that.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And did it affect your health also?
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, in some ways, yeah. I don't know exactly how to. I can't say exactly how, because I didn't have any long-term physical. I've had some heart issues. I've had. It seems to me that it affected my mental capacity and maybe the way that I functioned more. So I saw it more in the cognitive. I lost my ability to process. That was something that I didn't realize had happened.
Yeah.
So I found myself incapable of usually working as a producer, and kind of there's an engineering side, knowing how to route things and put things together, and it's what I did as a creative. And all of a sudden I realized I couldn't do that anymore.
Wow.
And I was just trying to figure out basic wiring with somebody. And this was a good year after, and I had no idea, because I wasn't having to work. So none of my faculties were being tested except to deal with the family. And I was able to be in the crisis mode, but and step in if we needed to deal with something. But practically speaking, just the ability to cognitively say, oh, we'll do this, there was nothing there. I had no idea what was left. I didn't know what was up or down.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't just a couple months later, the pandemic hit. So lockdown. And now we're trapped within our own home, in the very home where he passed. So there's a madness to it that I don't know how to explain, but I do know that the stress of things ends up affecting our, I believe that our emotional condition will eventually affect our bodies. And I'm thankful that I didn't have anything that was really serious, but I mean, I had a few more little heart issues, but I feel like I was always trying to deal with the stress of things.
Yeah.
I feel like I have kind of my own awakening of how to manage it. So I tried to face it as quickly as I could.
Right.
One example is the image and the flashback of discovering his body. Yes. I had some therapists that would recommend try to flip the image or something, and I thought, I know this is going to sound crazy, but if the Buddhists believe in sitting in the fire, maybe there's a reason my body is trying to bring it up. Maybe if I face it, maybe it'll be better. I can't believe that I did it, but I made the decision because it was driving me insane. And when I finally decided, okay, I'm just going to face it and sat in it, and now I'm not going to talk about how hard that was. But it did. I feel that it got me through something, and now I can still see the image. I can revisit it to some degree. It'll probably still, but the pressure of all that, it dissipated a lot.
Wow.
So there's something to facing it head on and going for it that I think is not easy. It's not for the faint of heart, but if you have a support system, if we can be authentically supportive, we can make it.
It can be done.
It can be done.
It's
and I
not
recommend
easy.
it's not easy, and I do recommend it. So you have to get you have to feel it to heal it. I believe that really, unfortunately, is just kind of the way it is.
And we as a society, we want to run away from everything that hurts.
We do.
We don't want to be uncomfortable with certain subjects, so we just don't talk about it. And it's like, we can't keep doing that. It's not working.
Yeah. And I would add to it, I think that if I did not do that, if I chose to run, which is an easy temptation, I don't judge anybody who does.
Absolutely.
I do believe my health would have been worse.
Well,
I do.
I don't know if you know this, but after my son died, my husband wanted to die also. And yes, he ended up a year and a half. I don't remember. I can't do the time spans anymore. June of last year, my husband had open heart surgery because he had a literal and figurative broken heart. And all the doctors knew it. They just knew it. You know what I mean? And so it was like it gravely affected my husband's health. I mean, he was days from death. He had a blood infection that it was actually strep. Which,
interesting.
I know. And it damaged his spleen, his kidneys, his lungs, and his heart.
Wow.
And what's interesting and very strange is that I had forgotten that Jackson had strokes in his spleen, in his kidneys. And he had a flap on his mitral valve. And Mike had something with his aortic valve. Like, so you cannot make that up.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so, like, realizing the gravity of what grief can do to your body is really something that also needs to be talked about, because, you know, we want to hurry up, get them through the process, and then let's move along, you know. That's not how it goes.
No, and I think I think I'm grateful that I was aware of that, because I think that I was, gosh, if I give into this, there could be a vice, there could be this. And I didn't want that.
I mean, he's been a lot better than I mean, I'm a disaster. I'm the worst I've ever been. Like, just weight loss. I have restless leg. I'm on antidepressants. I have, my thyroid doesn't work anymore. What else? I mean, I take so. I have chronic back pain. Like, I'm just a disaster.
Well, and you went back to, Margaret went back to work.
Right.
And my career was over, and thankfully we had a GoFundMe that supported us with the amount that I would have earned in that year.
Wow.
But she had made a choice, and so I know there was a lot that she bore for us as a family by doing that, but there was a lot that her heart and soul and body took on as well.
Yeah.
So.
And I don't think sometimes people realize, like, you know, if they're like, oh, I can't give much to a GoFundMe, like, because you're never prepared for your child's death, and it will obliterate you on every level. And that is what kept us afloat, you know? So it's like, anytime now I see a GoFundMe, I give to it, because I'm like, oh my God, like, you saved us.
We would
you know
have
what
been
I mean?
done.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely done. And I've told people since then.
On the street.
People like, I don't know what to do. You know what? Find out. First and foremost, do they need money?
Yes.
Because in our culture, if you don't have it, bankruptcy, you're out.
You're done.
And that's that. Yeah. That's a very important.
Right. Amron doesn't care if you lost your son.
No, that is true. Were you going to refer to something in the book?
Yeah, I was going to say something else.
We were talking about health. It's okay. It is totally okay.
Okay.
We were talking about how it affects your health.
How she was asking about how it affected my health.
I don't remember. Okay. So he was talking about facing
Yes.
the trauma, right? So this one book is just incredible. It's called Bearing the Unbearable, Love, Loss, and the Heartbreaking Path of Grief. And when I was writing about it, like, you know, to prepare, let me read what it's about here.
Yes.
Hold on. So when a loved one dies, the pain of loss can feel unbearable, especially in the case of a traumatizing death that leaves us shouting no with every fiber of our body. The process of grieving can feel wild and nonlinear and often lasts much longer than other people, the non-bereaved, tell us it should. So this woman here, she speaks about having an emotionally safe space or a home for our feelings, a place where they're validated, protected, ritualized, witnessed, reflect upon, and understood. And she has all of these different things about facing that, the gunk, right? Like the backpack that we have to carry, this loss of just honoring those feelings and different exercises, but it's just so eloquently written. But she says, you know, she talks about these two scales. So there's the grief intensity scale, right? 1 to 10. And it depends on the day, right? And then there's the ability to cope with grief. And there's a scale. And she says, I don't care about the grief intensity scale. What I want is for the ability to cope with the grief to lessen, right? So it's never going to go away.
Right.
But it's how can I carry this backpack? How can I deal with this grief and not let it capsize me?
Yes.
And that's
goodness.
what's so difficult.
Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah, that one's,
But it's amazing, this book.
Yeah, it sounds like it's something I need to look at because I was definitely grasping at anything like, please, someone help me, you know, and It's Okay That You're Not Okay was one of the books that I had looked at. And I liked because you could kind of jump around a little bit because, you know, you have about a 3-second attention span after something like this happens. So like, have you guys, I just want to say like, meeting people who have truly faced it head on is not something that you come across every day, you know?
Well, I have to say, too, that, you know, I told you this when we met up and we were talking, and Alvin, you know, the night that it happened, he got us together, the girls, me, and he said, look, we're gonna get through this, and I just want you to know that there's one rule. Not rule, but you said all emotions are acceptable. He said, you want to cry, cry. You want to laugh, laugh. You want to not talk about it, don't talk about it. And there was this there was just this freedom to be in the grief.
Be where you were.
Yeah. And I think that was really foundational for us.
You set the stage.
Yeah.
You know?
And I've just had this rule for myself, like when I cry, I cry. Yeah. When I feel, you know, and I just honor it because, let me read this, sorry.
Please.
There's this really beautiful quote, and when we went to Annie's Hope, we gave this as gifts to the other people that had lost children. And it's by Jamie Anderson, and she says, grief, I've learned, is really just love. It's all the love you want to give but cannot. All that unspent love gathers in the corners of your eyes, the lump in your throat, and in the hollow part of your chest. Grief is just love with no place to go. So this is me, like, he's not here. I don't get to love him. Right. So this is me loving him, like, because that will never stop.
Yeah. And telling his story, like, I remember having to just say it over and over again. Like, I had to repeat it because I'm like, this does not make sense to me. I have to keep saying it because it just doesn't make sense to me. But, you know, every time you tell his story, you're keeping his legacy alive. Right. And, you know, as painful as it is for you and for even for other people, it's like, gosh, like, you just want people to remember your child.
Yep.
Because the thought of them not coming up in conversation, and people don't know how to do that sometimes. They don't know how to bring people up. And I just want to say all the time, no, please tell me stories. Tell me the things. Because if you think I forgot, I didn't forget.
It's right here.
Yeah. Yes. So.
Can I add one other
course,
thing to
please.
that? Because
Yes.
I think an important lesson in that idea of saying, all emotions are acceptable. Our society, our culture, and I do want to say it's our culture. I don't think it's humanity, and I think it's just the way we are. We don't make space for that kind of grief.
No.
It's too messy for us. And I think if people, I believe I've learned that the purpose of grief is acceptance.
Yes.
So if we don't grieve, we cannot accept.
Absolutely.
And if we deny grief, we will be in that unacceptance, and it could destroy us. And I think that creating a safe space for people to grieve without any expectation is really the best thing. Meet their physical needs, create a space, and allow them to be where they are, and don't try to control their grief.
I remember what I was going to say.
Yes.
There you go.
I can't tell you how many times, I mean, I think we've said it. I mean, we don't say it as much, but I think we've said it before. We just wanted somebody to come mother us. Do you know what I mean? Can you feel that? Yeah. We wanted somebody to just pick us up, tuck us in, feed us. Do you know what I mean? And that's kind of, in my wildest dreams, what I would love to offer people.
Absolutely.
Just a place that's nice.
Yes.
I don't need the Ritz.
Right.
I just need comfort.
Yeah.
I need somebody to show up and be my mom.
Yes. I think all the time, so I was actually getting a massage, and the guy said my shoulders were rounded, and I was like, well, what does that mean? He goes, well, when you've experienced a lot of trauma, your body wants to go into the fetal position. And I'm like, when he said that, I'm like, you don't even know how often I want to curl up in a ball and just bawl in the center of a room or throw a fit. You know what I mean? And so it was just like, oh my gosh, I couldn't believe it. And I would have given anything for someone to just say, it's going to be okay. You can get through this. You can do this or whatever. But I had that, but I didn't have that. And again, because I didn't have any friends at the time who had lost a child. And thankfully now I have a community who understands, and I don't have to put on a front for somebody and make it easier or more comfortable for them. Because I always say, I'm not doing this to make you feel uncomfortable. I'm doing it because it's my son and I want to talk about him, you know?
Right.
Yes, that's, that was going to take me a little minute to swallow that one. But will you talk about the creative society that you have created or are creating?
Yeah.
Can you go back to the shirt?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, there's I have to say
backstory.
that I believe that there is I got to preface this with something without opening a Pandora's box, but I'm a firm believer in the metaphysical. I don't know if there is an agenda or a religious side to it, but I think that there are unseen things that go on in this world that affect how we live, in, call it synchronicities, call it omens, whatever you want to call it. But I think without an understanding of that level of the unseen, I don't think that I would be here after this happened, because there was a part of me that needed to know where he went.
Yeah.
How that begins, strangely, it comes to the day that we had to decide what what we have on his body for the viewing. And Margaret had some shirts laid out. And I don't know that I was thinking about any organization before this at all. No. But there were some things that I was wishing I could do this and do that, and I wanted to do some ventures. But she had some of the shirts that he wore, some band names and things. But one said Creative Society. It was just it's a black shirt with a circular logo, just Creative Society. It had a palm tree in the middle of it. And I just saw that, and I said, where did that come from? And she said, he got it at TJ Maxx or something. I don't know where it was.
I remember it vividly that we were at Marshall's, and he just came up to me. He's like, hey, can I get this? And I was like, yeah, sure.
So I saw that, and I just said, that's it. I wanted that to be the shirt that he wore, and then she picked a flannel, and she was okay with it. And I just knew when I saw that there was going to be, I just don't understand how it happened. I knew there was going to be a creative society, and I knew that he was going to be the founding member, but I didn't know exactly what it was going to be. And then there was a series of other synchronicities and things that just kept confronting. It was very strange. It'll take a whole other podcast to
I
talk
understand,
about. I don't
but
understand.
I understand because I have it happen to me all the time.
Okay. So what we did was it wasn't too long. It was before the pandemic, end of December, beginning of January. We decided, let's get all of his friends together, invite them over to the house. Now Maya was a year behind, so she still had some of the same friends. So we had 15 or so kids from the high school that they immediately were willing to come over and just be with us. Mm-hmm. And I have a history of working with youth. I used to be a youth pastor back when I was in the Christian ministry, which I don't do anymore. But so I had experience working with young people. Well, Margaret was a high school teacher teaching freshmen, and so when we invited them over, we decided to ask them things like, what is it they need? We were reaching out to see what is it that they would want. Well, how can we help? And it was that was the first night, that first day. I think they were there for 6 hours straight.
Oh my gosh.
I didn't expect that. Neither of us did. We were so exhausted.
Oh,
it was only weeks after Addison had passed, but Margaret was asking questions, tell me about him, and they were sharing stories. We found out some of the shit he was up to. But I also learned that a majority of the friends in his circle were all creatives, and they were struggling because it seems that our society values production, but the creative heart values expression. And how do you make those two meet? Well, you don't very well. And so we started thinking, what can we do? How can we help? They all wanted to be artists or perform and write. That's all they knew is but they didn't know how to fit into the production world and how to make money at it. And they didn't know those things. And they came from a lot of broken homes, broken down homes. Their orientations were different. It was so, you see all the things that were against them, and they didn't know how to face the world. And Addison was listening to all of them and taking all that in. So we started meeting every 2 weeks. They came over to the house, and we do what I guess we call them expression sessions now. They just come over and just draw, paint, talk. We'd make coffee. We talked about maybe doing a little coffee shop somewhere, maybe making an organization community. And it was kind of going, but I wasn't ready. I knew I wasn't ready, but I didn't know what was going to happen.
When you said, you were like, I'm not forcing anything in life anymore.
No, it'll happen when
done.
it will happen when it's when it's supposed to.
When it's supposed to happen, no sooner, no later. But I knew that there was nothing else I was going to be able to do with the rest of my life because I had built a business after I'd left in ministry. I tried to build a business as a creative artist, doing graphic design, websites, whatever, and then try to do music, and then had a studio. Well, that was already 2 or 3 times of reinventing myself.
Right.
I was tired.
Right.
I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Right.
Well,
And
it was all tainted with Addison.
Yeah.
Right.
He took so much with him, which is okay.
I mean, it took
He
you
it
until
into
last week to set up the drums again.
Wow.
Yeah, his drum set he took all that creativity into the shadows with him, and it's just now coming back, which is okay.
Yeah.
But during the pandemic time is when it got very strange. And that was when I couldn't really meet with the kids anymore. I stayed in touch with them digitally online when we could, and we'd see whoever, because there were a couple of his friends that were on the edge as well.
Right.
And we didn't know if we
Right.
were going to lose them.
Right.
I was privileged to have a couple of conversations with a couple of them to help, hopefully it seems like, help them get back on the ground. And then there's so much grief. And then one thing I did learn about is that I recognized the pain of losing Addison. It was much more severe. It was a greater pain, but there was a lesser version of it I remember experiencing in my emotional betrayals and trauma in my life. And I realized that even being hurt by others and being mistreated can also bring a form of grief.
Sure.
It was similar. I didn't
Right.
realize how similar. I knew this pain, but I didn't know it this well.
Not to that
I didn't know it
degree.
could be to that degree. Exactly. It was so much larger. So maybe I knew foothills, but this was a mountain. I don't know how to describe it.
Right.
So there was a part of me that was kind of familiar with what I knew I was going to have to face, and I could kind of embrace. It allowed me to make connections to things that I didn't realize were there. So I spent a lot of that time during the pandemic kind of thinking through that. And then somehow or another, I ended up reconnecting with Native American thinking. And that's when the concept of us being a creative society, a society as a people that embrace a culture and a territory.
Wow.
And so what can we do? How can we? So we needed to form something, and I thought of tribalism. in the positive way, not the political phrase that people use. I think it's out of context, that we needed to band together in smaller groups and support each other. And that turned into this vision for kind of an egalitarian, kind of a community, but not communal, not necessarily living together or what people call, like kind of hippie thinking and things like that. Not that that's wrong, but it just didn't feel the same. But there somehow needed to be a collective to support each other, meaning that if we're waiting for one artist, one artist might write a hit tune and become very famous, but then it's all about them now. Now they're gone. Well, what about the artist that can say, well, think of all the others, my family and all those that helped me. What if that person would bring what they earn back and spread that out and support the ones who just weren't gifted enough to write a hit tune, but they needed to live too.
Right.
And our culture is so individualist thinking, we don't realize that we could be more supportive. We the buzzwords of socialism, communism, whatever. But the bottom line is people need support, and not everybody's going to be able to earn like you can, and that's not something that's just on them. Work harder, because obviously my story is an example of I worked my ass off in my own way, and I would tell people like, you got to work hard. Well, let me tell you what happened to my business, and then everything gets quiet. That's the part we don't think about, is that opportunity might be there, but tragedy can come and you never know. So how do we support that for the ones that are unseen, that are struggling, that don't? That's what the creative society concept has kind of evolved into, and it's an experiment.
Yes.
We don't know, we've only recently formed into a physical location and kind of organizing. So we're coming on 2.5 years.
Right.
So it's very slow growing, but it's an organic process.
Beautiful.
So rather than plan out what kind of a tree we're going to have and how many branches and how much, we don't know that. We just plant a seed, water it, and that's kind of how it's growing. But it is it's evolving into a very tight-knit, small group society, which we think could be replicated in other places. That isn't necessarily for artists. It is creative society, but art is anything done well.
Yes.
So whatever you want to do well, that creative side of you that needs to come out, we have to enable that, because there's healing in creativity. Yes. And there's also depression in the lack of expression. So if you don't allow somebody to express, they could become depressed. Wow. So there's depression in our society can cause a lot of things, and if people could just let it out, you might find that they can actually heal.
And you are allowing people that space that maybe nobody else had thought about, and so you're filling a gap that needs to be filled. So I love that. Wow, that's amazing.
It's still evolving. Sure. We have kind of a twofold approach, which is being developed literally in the last couple of days. I'm writing this up to make a presentation to St. Charles, a commission in St. Charles City where we live. And we have to deal with things on two fronts, which is similar to our discussion. We think, let's get mental health and help these people. Well, then you're going to throw them right back into the same battlefield where they got shot in the first place. Yeah. We have to start learning how to stop questioning the individual and start being willing to question our society. Mm-hmm. We just have to do that. Yeah. It's got to stop. Yeah. We're always blaming the victim. Oh, it's them. They have mental health. Well, how do you know that the anguish isn't coming from the life they have to live?
Systemic patterns.
It's not affecting you. You're more fortunate. So you write the history, right? And so I believe that it's important for us to look at dealing with the physical needs of someone and the emotional needs, and be able to balance that. What good is it going to do if I'm trying to help you find your mental health, but Amarin's going to shut you off and you don't have any food?
Right.
What happens if I give you Amarin food, whatever, but we do nothing for your mental? The anguish cycle just kind of continues.
Yeah.
So two wings to fly, believing in everything has to have that great balance, breathing in, breathing out, structure, freedom, sensitivity, substance. We take care of the physical needs. We try to take care of the emotional as well. So that's kind of the goal.
I love it. Wow, that's exciting. And we'll talk later about my idea about a coffee shop. So, what do you want people to know about suicide? I know that is a very, very heavy question, but if you could answer that.
What do I want to say? Well, okay, so I'll just read what I wrote because I'm not thinking straight here. So I said, I'm not sure it can be prevented. I think there's a few factors. So in our case, right, I'm not speaking for everyone, but for Addison, there were 3 things. First of all, I talked about this, right? Addison was loved. He was cared for. We really thought a lot about how we parented him. And he had gotten to the age where we had essentially done our job of parenting him. He had become more independent, and he was making his own choices. And he made that choice to end his life. And I think to a certain extent, it's my job to honor that. Like, I get peace from that by being like, that was his decision.
Right.
Secondly, like Alvin said, you know, he didn't show signs. And I think a lot of kids that are like him, they're smart, they're independent, they don't show the quintessential signs. And it just seems very you know what I mean, formulaic, and it's like, you know, are you doing this? Are you doing that? You know what I mean? Like, that's not clear cut for how to deal with this.
Right.
And then the third part is, I really, you know, maybe this is my pessimistic worldview, but it goes back to what you just said. I mean, the world is a dark place for these kids. I see it every day as a teacher. They lack hope. There's a certain degree of apathy. They see the intensity of the issues that are going on, and they don't see solutions. They feel, you know, when we were in high school, it was like, you go to college, you get a great job, you're gonna blah blah blah. They're like, no,
Right.
College doesn't work anymore. What I don't, you know, and then you hear about these kids nowadays that go back and live with their parents.
Right.
We are at a crucial time. I really believe that. And, you know, you spoke about it before we started the podcast. I mean, this is an epidemic.
Absolutely.
Kids are killing themselves because there is a lack of hope. There is a lack of, where am I going to fit in this system that just robs you, just takes what it can. And, you know, I hear the stories now of all these people. They're like, I can't find a therapist. They're booked. When this country decides that this is an important thing, then we'll see changes. But it's not important.
Yeah, it's all true. It's all painfully true. And people don't want to talk about it. And yes.
So I'm not sure that it can be prevented. But at the same time, we have to talk about it. And we just have to make feelings, emotions, rest.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, I'm a teacher, and these kids sit there 8 hours a day. How is that acceptable?
Right.
And we expect them, you know, like, why don't they get a break? You know, 25 minutes for a lunch? Yeah. It's not a sustainable model.
Right. What would you say to another parent who either they're parenting a teenager or they have lost a child to suicide? What would you say as a parent who's lost a child to suicide?
I don't know about, you know, you do the best you can, right? And we have always tried to practice. It's hard because it's like so many times the one hook I would hang my hat on was being a mom. Like, that's the one thing I was like, yes. And then this happened. But at the same time, you know, my therapist has said, this had nothing to do with you, Margaret. You know what I mean? You loved him. Right. This is, you know, it could have been 1,000 things. So I try to take that out of the equation.
Right.
And he's like, I know that you guys loved me.
Oh.
You know, in his note.
Wow.
So, but I think it's important. What I was going to say is to be honest with your kids. You know, like, I don't think it works to be authoritative anymore. You have to be honest with kids, and you have to be transparent, and you have to admit when you make mistakes, you know, like, hey, I'm sorry, I didn't see that the right way.
Right.
You know, how are you feeling about this? I think that is important.
Yeah.
But in terms of what I would tell another parent who lost a child to suicide, I would say you have to reach out to others who can validate your story. I mean, we needed that desperately. I needed someone to go, I get it, because I'm another parent.
Right.
It's not, you know, someone that's lived to 95, yes, that loss can be hard, but not a 16-year-old. It's completely different.
Yeah.
Always honor your feelings surrounding loss of your child, like we talked about earlier, right? Like just honoring them. Because they're going to keep coming if you don't honor them.
Yeah.
And then also, like, be gentle with yourself. I've had to really learn that. Like, I always, I'm expecting, okay, well, I'm going to be here. And my therapist is like, Margaret, no. You have been through major trauma.
Right.
You are doing great.
Yes.
You're doing all the things that you need to be doing.
Right.
You're not supposed to be here. So I have to be really compassionate with myself, which is really hard.
Yeah.
And take it day by day,
Yeah.
hour by hour, minute by minute, if you have to.
Yes,
and then
exactly.
what's important is celebrate the fact that you did it.
Yeah, exactly.
I did it.
I give myself awards all the time.
Exactly.
Like if I go to the DMV and I have all of my stuff, I give myself an award. Nobody else gives me any award.
Because what's profound about it is you are surviving this insurmountable loss.
Yep.
That's profound.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is. Yes, it is.
And yeah. So
Would you read
harder
the
than
poem?
hell. Oh, you want to? Okay, sorry.
That's okay.
Okay,
you can,
so
is it,
I was going to say reading, writing has helped me. Therapy has helped me.
Yes.
And I've been working so much on my writing, and I was just going to share one poem.
Yes, please.
So this is called Tossed About, and I wrote this like last year sometime. My spirit is tossed about like a newborn butterfly, like a lazy hibernating bear, like a little child lost in a crowd, like a messy playroom, like a confused middle-aged woman, like a sad grieving mother. What's up and what's down? I see the sky above and the ground beneath me, but I feel tossed about, in step with time and then taken over by it, or as if it will never pass. I wish for residual peace, for something to make sense, but nothing quite feels right. I don't know if my job is my calling. My body's not how I imagine it, nor does it feel good to call my own. My home is yet to feel like my own or give me that desired feeling of comfort. My girls are struggling. My husband is hurting. Friends are hard to come by. And the daily is just exhausting. And nothing grounds me in hope or certainty.
Wow. Wow. That is beautiful. Earlier today, I got an email. I serve on something called the Child Fatality Review Panel, and there was an email sent out that there is a huge increase in teenage suicide. And so I wanted to share on the letter, it says, if you are currently assisting a suicidal youth, contact the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK. All calls to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline from Missouri are routed to the call center that covers your school or campus's area. There are also local crisis services offered through Missouri's Access Crisis Intervention Providers. And I can attach that link. And also there's a crisis text line.
That's what I was going to say. And I have that in every single room at our school. And I think it's incredible because kids don't use the phone.
Right.
They hate the phone.
Yes.
So I always tell them, if you text to 741, someone will text you back.
Yes. Yes. And that was exactly.
And you don't have to be ready to commit the act. You can just be overwhelmed. I can't deal, feeling out of sorts. You don't have to be in crisis to use the text line. That's important too.
That is, yes, that's very important. So I'm going to go ahead and attach that information.
Thank you.
And I know that we could keep talking. And I knew that this was going to be a rich conversation. I'm just really honored to have met you guys and to see kind of what you're doing, because I think it's pretty amazing what you guys are doing.
See what happens. Yeah.
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 Just trying to make it.
Yeah. So go ahead.
Before I was going to,
Yeah.
I want to throw one little thing out.
Sure.
If you're okay, I know I do this, but there are those that aren't going to reach out. There are those that don't know. They're scared to do. Their parents that don't know how to address it with their kids.
Sure.
These are great tools, but if you have somebody in your life you're concerned about something like that, the most important thing to be able to do, I think, is to listen.
Yeah.
If at all possible, without the fear of you don't have to react. It is true, if a person's going to choose to do it, they're going to choose to do it. I've had conversations where I've said, look, I can't stop you, but if you can stick around, maybe we can figure something out. Yeah. But I remember something that somebody said, and this is for parents. One of the parents at my Annie's Hope had said his son had overdosed. And he said, I know he was kind of a knucklehead, but I'd rather have him be a knucklehead and still be around.
For sure.
And I realized, and I used to say to the kids, do what you want as long as nobody gets hurt. I don't care if you're a bum for the rest of your life. If you need, Addison couldn't embrace that. But the truth is that just embrace people. We need a safe place so they're not productive, so they may be kooky, maybe things are not going well. But wouldn't you rather have them around? So creating a safe space as well as a place to talk if they need to is essential. And I just feel like maybe somebody might need to be able to hear that. Like a parent doesn't have to make anything happen. Just let them be. It'll be all right. We have 2 other children, and we have to think about that with them.
Sometimes you have to say, like, I don't know what to say right now. I love you.
Right.
I'm going to just let you be. I'm here. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, we're all trying to do the best we can.
Right.
So
anyway.
the way I ended all of my episodes in my first season was a Ram Dass quote. We're all just walking each other home.
Yeah.
And that just like settles my soul. Well, this is season 2. And my favorite Maya Angelou quote is, we do the best we can until we know better. And then when we know better, we do better. And it's just crazy how every episode, it fits, And so we're just doing the best we can. And, you by this conversation, you're shining light on a dark subject. And we can't bring stuff to the light if we don't continue to talk about it. So
I hope it was worthwhile.
Oh my gosh.
Now I'm doubting myself.
No, please don't. Please don't. No.
As I do, but yeah.
No. I mean, it was beautiful to me. So, thank you so much
Thank
for
you
joining me.
for having us.
Yes, thank you.
We are beautiful miracles.